Hi, this is my review of Crawling Under a Broken Moon, issue number 2. Crawling Under a Broken Moon is a fanzine for the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game. I'm going to put a link in the description below to my review of issue number 1. Issue number 2 brings a lot of new things to the game. It brings a new character class, a new non-player characters, and even an entire adventure site. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is great. It's fairly short, just 28 pages long. It's not bookmarked, but here it's not a big deal because it's so short. Everything is well written and explained. The graphic layout is quite old school, quite simple, and you have awesome old school looking illustrations. The quality is pretty good overall. Now let's talk about the content. After a small introduction to what this issue contains, you have the Mutant, a new character class. Now the Mutant is really cool. It's a very sturdy character class, and it has random mutations that could work to your advantage or perhaps even as a disadvantage, so it's a bit of a wild card type of class. It's pretty strong because at the very least you get 2 hit points when you level up. You have a good selection of weapons, although the armor that you can use is limited by your physiology. If you're like a mutant that has like a hunchback and perhaps other weird limbs growing out of your body, you won't be able to put all of the armor that you find on your body. And so it's actually a pretty good class for up close and personal type of combat. But you have to play your mutations as best as you can. It's pretty good at surviving as well. It's a type of like a ranger or forester type of character class. You have a good chance of finding food, shelter, clean water, etc. Now when it comes to mutations, you get random tables to determine what types of deformities you get. Some of them will work to your advantage, but there's a chance that they could be a disadvantage as well. So for example, maybe you have fish-like features. So in the best case scenario, you are fully amphibious and you can breathe underwater. But there's also a chance that these vestigial fins that you have on your body will reduce your movement. So it all depends on a percentage chance when you roll your dice. And you have other things, like for example, maybe you have a tortoise-like feature and you have a bonus to your armor class, but maybe your agility is reduced. It all depends on the roll that you get. So this is not a balanced class, this is a fun class to see what you can get when you create a new character. Or maybe for example you have crystalline features. So you have like this prismatic skin and you get a bonus to armor class, but there is also a chance that you get more damage when you take critical hits. Or maybe you have vine-like features. So you have a bonus to your camouflage. When you try to hide, you have a bonus. But maybe you have a weakness when it comes to photosynthesis, so you have to make a save or you immediately fall asleep at night or in total darkness. You have some other mutations, such as strange head. The mutant has an unusual head. In the best case scenario, your head is sunk into your torso, so there is a 50% chance to ignore any critical hits involving head strikes. But maybe this works against you. Maybe you have additional vestigial heads that interfere with your motor control, and there is a chance to perform less well when carrying out different tasks and actions. And something that I really like is that all of these random tables have a lot of possibilities. There's a 60% chance of having the best bonus. Then you get a 40% chance to get a minor bonus, but when it comes to 30% or 20%, well, there is a chance you will get some penalties or disadvantages. You also have a random encounter table to determine the origin of your mutation. Maybe it's a magical curse, or maybe it's a reaction to toxic waste, or maybe your DNA was rewritten by a nanovirus. You have many tables to customize your mutant, and that's really awesome. Then you have a section telling you how to make mutant monsters, because these mutation tables allow you to create new monsters for this post-apocalyptic setting. And they give you an example of how to mutate a common wolf into a falcon wolf. Or maybe you want to mutate an ape man into the mighty Tarrascape. That's pretty cool. They combine that classic monster with this post-apocalyptic creature. And then you have new weapons, grenades. You have all sorts of grenades with different effects. Some of them just deal raw damage. Some of them are smoke grenades. Some others are incendiary grenades. So you have grenades for all sorts of situations. You have all the information on the check that you need to do to avoid that grenade, the blast range, the damage, the cost, etc. And then you have the section Twisted Menagerie, and here you have new creatures to serve as antagonists or perhaps even allies. It sounds unlikely, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. You have the zombie monks of the Cyberhive. So these are basically undead brought back to life through technology. And you have all the information on their attacks and their roles. And we'll know more about them when I talk about the adventure site in this magazine. Oh, and this could contain spoilers, so keep that in mind if you are not a game master. And you have different technological gifts concerning the zombie monks and related to the Cyberhive, which is sort of like a demigod or perhaps even a deity of sorts in this setting. And then you have the Robo-Lich. Now the Robo-Lich is basically, just take a look at it. It's almost like a tank combined with a Terminator of sorts. Very powerful, but it's a Robo-Lich, so as you would expect, it has the capability of casting spells. And these work sort of like in unison. The zombie monks usually transport corpses to be modified into new zombie monks. They're kind of like the shock troopers or even workers of the Cyberhive. And then you have the Robo-Lich that is like the enforcer of this cybernetic mastermind. And you have a table detailing the spells that the Robo-Lich knows. You also have a new thing known as the Mutant, and as you can see, it's a terrifyingly huge aberration with some particularly nasty mutant powers. You also have information on Mutant, which is a smaller abomination. Now let's talk about the floating tower of the Cyberhive. This is a very weird structure. It's basically a huge tower floating over a pit of like really hot mud. It's boiling mud and caustic vapors. And there are a few bridges that give you access to it. Now the funny thing about this place is that it's not overtly hostile. You could basically enter the floating tower, and if the cyber mind that controls the tower doesn't have an interest in you, it will just ignore you, and you can basically go about your business inside the tower. Before you can enter the tower, that's an important consideration. You need to solve a very simple puzzle involving holographic colored blocks. And once you get into the tower, the mind of the Cyberhive is going to analyze you to see if you're going to be useful to it. If you're not of no use to it and you're not disruptive, you could basically walk around the tower without it attacking you or anything. But if it considers you worthy to be put to the test, you will be submitted to different random events as you move across the tower. Now, mapping the Cyberhive is useless because this tower is controlled by this fusion of different brains, and they constantly change corridors and change the shape and materialize and dematerialize things in this extra dimensional space that is the interior of the tower. So this is a very awesome place to play around or mess with your players, because they're going to keep their maps very carefully, writing each corridor and such, but you can change all of the configuration and they're going to be terrified at how all of their progress is pretty much worth nothing. And so you have information on different chambers. There's a zombification chamber where these zombie monks bring different corpses and modify them to create these sort of like Frankenstein-like constructs. And you can actually talk with the zombie monks, but the process of turning a corpse into a zombie monk is so gruesome that you can actually lose intelligence when talking to them. But if you look into the garbage bins and such, you may find some articles or objects of value of the corpses that they have brought along. You also have some other places, like for example the power chamber. If you're not careful, you may actually get struck by purple lightning that is sort of like an entity powering the entire chamber. And there's the organ chamber where they create the robo-leaks. They basically take sort of like an artificial organ and implants that organ into the robo-leaks, and it gives them enhanced spell casting capabilities. But it's actually possible, for example, if one of your characters has like a medical background, it's possible to implant one of these organs into a wizard in the party. But there could be consequences, but still it could be worth a shot. And then you have the central shaft chamber. And again, if you are too disruptive in this area, you may get attacked by the tower, but you can still learn about the technology of the place. You also have the fabrication chamber, where there are more zombie monks and robots. And as long as you are playing nice, they will not attack you. And then you finally get to the control chamber, where you can meet this fusion of minds known as the Earth Brain of the Cyberhive. And this effectively can turn into a patron for the player characters. You get more information about it in issue number 3. And if you successfully completed different tests brought upon you by this Cyber Mind, it will judge you as someone worth getting into its army or its forces, and it will send you into a mission. And this is a great opportunity for the game master to create a new adventure. Maybe for example, here it is suggested that the Cyber Mind sends you to this city, and it provokes some sort of like a zombie outbreak. So you could build an entire campaign around the designs of this Cyber Mind, as it is testing you and preparing you for some unknown purpose. Of the types of tests that the mind will place upon you, you get, for example, a corridor that teleports you back to its beginning unless you walk through it backwards. Or maybe there is a tunnel filled with holes, and if you with the same number of holes that equal to the numbers of the members of the party, and if you only get your hand inside a single hole, you will get damaged. But if all of the members in the party get their hands inside the holes, the door in front will open. So it's those kind of puzzles. Some other puzzles involve fighting against monsters, but in general, it's supposed to be like a fair test to see if you're worthy to serve the Cyberhive. And you get more information on the Cyberhive and the types of roles it will serve as a patron or as a source of adventures. But if you want to use this Cyber Mind as a deity of sorts, you need to purchase future volumes of Crawling Under a Broken Moon. I think all the information is contained in issue number 3, if I'm not mistaken. Still, if you do not want to handle the Cyber Mind as a patron, you could use it as a recurring villain, or just someone who to provide missions and adventures for the player characters. Now, what do I think of this issue number 2 of Crawling Under a Broken Moon? I think this is an excellent issue, just like number 1. It's really cool. I have all of the issues that have come out up to date, and not one of them has disappointed me. So if you play Dungeon Crawl Classics or any old school Renaissance type of role-playing game, I recommend that you get this issue, because it's quite easy to convert this information into your game of choice. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.